It's always clear that the people who rely on religion when it comes to reality really have no clue whatsoever what they're talking about because they lack the ability to step back and rationally examine what they believe in light of actual evidence and critically thought out argumentation. They believe because they've been told they have to. They haven't actually been convinced through rational means that they ought to. This video is just one more example as Poindexter here spouts a bunch of religiously charged nonsense that makes absolutely zero sense to anyone who approaches the argument from outside of their blind and totally unsupported faith. Seriously, is anyone surprised at these wingnuts anymore? Ah, good. Fighting for things that don't exist at the behest of imaginary friends in the sky. Yeah, this is starting off good.
Hello everyone, this is the Marian Catholic coming to you with charity and clarity. Never in the history of humanity has the institution of marriage come under such rigorous attack as it has in the latter part of the 20th century.
That all depends on who you're talking to. After all, the institution of marriage has meant a lot of very different things to a lot of very different people over a very, very long period of time. So, do you mean, say, a religious institution of marriage, at which point you have to ask which religion, because most religions look at marriage differently? Or are you talking about the entirely secular institution of marriage, which we have in most Western democracies? I suspect you intend religion while talking about the West, where marriage is largely a secular practice.
It began with the introduction of no-fault divorce, which taught people to perceive marriage as merely a human contract that is entirely subject to the will of the parties involved.
But marriage is a purely human contract. Oh, I know you have an imaginary friend in the sky that you think sanctions marriage, but we live in the real world where all contracts are derived from society and not from your fanciful delusions.
Once this perception was given, it was a very short step to the introduction of contraception around the same time. If couples have complete control over marriage as such, it follows that they should also have complete control over the marital act and its natural consequences.
Newsflash for you. Contraception has been around for a lot longer than modern no-fault divorce. In fact, the earliest records we have date back to 1850 BCE in ancient Egypt. So it isn't like someone just thought up contraception in the modern day. Of course, you're delusional, so it wouldn't surprise me if you thought that's what actually happened.
It should be no surprise, therefore, that abortion was introduced in 1973 in the wake of contraception.
Whew boy, abortion was not introduced in 1973. We have records throughout the ancient world going back to the Code of Hammurabi in 1760 BCE that mention it. Abortion is nothing new, no matter how much your delusional mind wishes it was.
But of course, this diabolic train wreck does not stop there, but culminates in the redefining of marriage itself, an act for which the homosexuals have been clamoring for many years. If marriage is merely a legal contract that can be dissolved on a whim, then there is nothing to prevent marriage from being defined according to those whims.
Yeah, can't expect equality, can we? Well, no, not from the religious we can't. The religious are some of the biggest bigots out there, which is no surprise because the religious are some of the most irrational, delusional, mentally unstable people around. They believe in the supernatural. They think an invisible, intangible voyeur is watching their every move and will send those it disapproves of to burn in a lake of fire for all eternity. Why exactly should we listen to these crazy people again? I'm not quite clear on that.
The result is the breakdown of the family and the destruction of society.
Wrong. The result is equality for all and doing away with the ridiculously outdated religious mores that have plagued society for decades. Whether you like it or not, we are entering a post-religious age where belief in imaginary friends is not respected and people are not impressed with what's found in your ridiculous fairy tale books. Get used to it because things are only going to get worse for you from here.
Marriage is the bedrock of society. Faithful marriages produce stable families who become vibrant contributors to society. Broken marriages produce dysfunctional families who perpetuate that dysfunction into society.
And that may be true to a certain degree, but there's nothing wrong with a gay couple being married. They have just as strong a marriage as a heterosexual couple does. When you realize that divorce is highest among the religious, and the more religious you are, the more likely you are to get divorced, the idea that religiosity keeps couples together is just laughable.
Sheriff Gerges, author of What is Marriage? A Defense, makes it very clear to all the proponents of redefining marriage that science is not on your side. Every case study, every poll, and every data point unanimously demonstrates that people in healthy, lifelong traditional marriages are happier and tend to live longer than those who are divorced and remarried.
Science has nothing to do with marriage. Marriage is a voluntary, legal, contractual joining of two individuals, nothing more. And while it is true that married couples are happier and healthier than non-married couples, it does not differentiate between straight couples and gay couples.
They also show that children fare much better in a stable home environment with both a father and a mother. Who would have thought that we would actually need a case study to figure that out?
And that's a lie. There is one and only one study that suggested that this was true, and that's the 2010 study conducted by Mark Regnerus, which has since been entirely debunked. A scholar that closely studied the report stated that it has been disgraced and that the study itself was bad and substandard, and the University of Texas, which originally published the study, has since publicly distanced itself from the study. Mark Regnerus was called to testify as an expert witness at the Michigan same-sex marriage ban case, and the judge found his testimony to be, quote-unquote, entirely unbelievable and not worthy of serious consideration. The religious still use the study because they've got nothing else, but to everyone else, this has been totally discredited.
According to Gerges, traditional marriage is a bodily as well as an emotional and spiritual bond, distinguished thus by its comprehensiveness, which is, like all love, effusive, flowing out into the wide sharing of family life and ahead to lifelong fidelity. Even if you don't believe in God, it is clear from this reading and from scientific demonstration that the definition of marriage is based on something in reality, not merely in the mind of the parties involved. Marriage is, by its nature, a lifelong commitment, which is demonstrated by the lifelong consequences of its procreative aspect.
Newsflash for you, Gumby. You can be married without ever having children. In fact, a sizable number of couples do go through life without ever breeding by choice.
As Catholics, we have a far better understanding of the permanency of marriage because we recognize it as a covenant between a man and woman, which is sealed by the power of God, and as such cannot be undone by any human means.
No, that's because you people are delusional idiots. There's no evidence that there's any gods, and your ridiculous book doesn't impress anybody with half a brain.
This ultimately is the reason that homosexuality is regarded as gravely sinful, because it abuses the sexual faculties of the persons involved by utilizing them in a manner that is contrary to the plan of God for the propagation of the human race. Marriage is a comprehensive gift of self between one man and one woman in a lifelong covenant which is oriented toward procreation and raising of children.
The human race doesn't need any help. In fact, the human race needs to knock it the fuck off. There are too many humans infesting this rock as it is, and the majority of them hold asinine religious beliefs like yours. What we need is more responsible breeding, with people not popping out a unit every 9 months because they think some magic man in the sky wants them to.
Divorce, contraception, abortion, homosexuality, masturbation, pornography, in vitro fertilization, all of it is harmful to society and condemned by the church.
Fuck the church. If you want to know what's harmful to society, it's the church. Catholicism insists that its adherents breed up a storm so they have a ready supply of new members that can keep forking over money so the Pope can live a life of luxury in the Vatican and the churches can continue to revel in their gold-encrusted splendor. Come let me know when the Catholic Church starts preaching a life of personal responsibility and stops raking in the dough and raping altar boys.
Because it is contrary to the actual definition of marriage in reality.
No, it's just contrary to your religious delusion. Knock it the fuck off.
And because it undermines the purpose of the sexual act.
There is no inherent purpose to the sexual act. If the only purpose of the sexual act was to reproduce, then women wouldn't have such a small window every month where they're fertile, and humans wouldn't be prepared for sex all the time. But yeah, don't let that get in the way of your crazy beliefs or anything.
To permit such behaviors is to degrade the dignity of marriage to the point where human reproduction becomes little more than the instinctual act of a beast.
And welcome to reality.
If that is what you choose to be, then that is your business.
I don't choose to be anything. I am what I am. An animal, just like you. You choose to be delusional, and that's not okay.
But we should not be forced to redefine an institution that has stood for all of human history just because you want the legal protection to have sex with whoever you want, and you'll feel discriminated against if you don't get it.
First off, marriage has changed definitions many, many, many times throughout human history. Let's not pretend otherwise. Secondly, nobody's forcing you to do anything. You're welcome if you want to play religious make-believe in your church. What you can't force is other people to follow your crazy, stupid, obnoxious beliefs. That's not acceptable. I don't know where the hell you got the idea that it was.
Go cry me a river. May God love you and Our Lady protect you. I am the Marian Catholic.
And may Superman love you and Wonder Woman protect you. You, my friend, are a complete idiot. But honestly, doesn't that describe all these religious wackadoos? The more of these videos I look at, the more convinced I am that these people are out of their ever-loving gourds. And I don't say that to be insulting. I say it because it's honestly true. These are people who lack the ability to step back and intellectually examine their beliefs that they profess from outside their little religious echo chambers. They're not interested in objective truth or demonstrable fact. They're only interested in emotional comfort, feeling good about something they've been told to unquestionably accept. That's why religion almost always, almost without exception, demands blind adherence to faith. They're not allowed to ask questions. They're not allowed to go beyond the teachings of the church. They just have to believe. And if they don't believe, they face horrible punishment, usually in ways that are completely undemonstrable. You'll face torture. You'll face eternal torment, all of them conveniently beyond the veil of death, where nobody can come back and tell us if these claims are actual bullshit or not. Convenient how that works, isn't it? So please, let me know what you think about all this in the comments, and I'll see you all next time.